Science can cure diseases, create crops that are resistant to pests, and make our everyday lives so much easier. If you believe that science can help save our planet, you aren't wrong. But you need to be aware that in science, the good and the bad are often closer together than it seems. The inventors of substances that protect you from the sun didn't foresee that those same substances can harm the environment. And of course, biological research that helps us understand how bacterial spores from the soil can infect cattle is really important. But in 2001, this research was used for a bioterrorist attack. The artificial intelligence systems that researchers all over the world are currently working on can give senior citizens more autonomy and make driving much safer. But they might also be used in autonomous weapon systems. This is a typical example for what is called dual-use technology. Another example for dual use is rocket technology, which carried men to the moon and is also used in intercontinental ballistic missiles. And by the way, don't think that this should only be an issue for engineering. Research from psychologists, for example, can be used to manipulate customers. So who is responsible for the many consequences that innovations can have? The scientist or engineer who created the invention? The military who used it to kill and destroy? The politicians who should have come up with laws and regulations that would have prevented the worst? Well, being a scientist yourself, you might have guessed the answer. Most ethicists agree that scientists and engineers are at least co-responsible. After all, they are the ones who know best about their inventions, and who are therefore most capable of foreseeing any harm that could be caused by them. This is why they have to carry at least some co-responsibility for their inventions. Are you thinking about your own work? What kind of consequences it might have? Are you already feeling the weight of responsibility? You're not sure how to shoulder it? Well, there are some frameworks developed for just that kind of situation. The European Responsible Research and Innovation Framework, for example. It rests on 4 pillars: anticipation, reflexivity, inclusion, and responsiveness. Let's have a look at the first pillar, anticipation. That basically means you have to ask the what-if questions. What if, by chance, anything goes wrong with this experiment? What if someone else uses my innovation in a different way? There are many what-if questions you can ask about your project. Don't hesitate to ask them all. If you're not sure about the answers to your what-if questions, or about the questions themselves, talk about them with your colleagues, and also with your family and friends. Pillar number 2, reflexivity. It's not just that you, as a scientist, have to reflect about your work and the impact of your work on society. There is a need for a broader reflexivity on an institutional level, where the division of labor, hierarchy within science, and the responsibility of science as part of society in general are discussed and reflected. The third pillar of the European Framework on Responsible Innovation is important for almost all aspects of this ethics tutorial: inclusion. This simply means you should include all stakeholders and the public in the process of research and innovation as early as possible. By doing so, you make sure that the values, needs, and expectations of society are addressed. The last pillar is responsiveness, and that's probably the hardest one to achieve, because you and the scientific institutions you are working for have to be able to change directions quickly in response to changing circumstances. That happened, for example, in many labs during the coronavirus pandemic, but it shouldn't require a crisis to do so. You might think that this framework is way too idealistic and schematic, that it would never work in your country or in your research field. Well, you might be right. When it comes to responsible innovation, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Scientists in India and Brazil, for example, have their own take on these issues. taking the specific situation and the intellectual traditions of their countries into account. And if you don't like frameworks at all, you can learn from the example of other scientists. In 2006, nano-researchers published a call for a research agenda with regard to potential risks in Nature magazine. We've put the link on our website. Check it out. But the most important thing is, you are a member of society, so the future problems your research might cause would affect you too. So don't be afraid of asking the hard questions about risks and values. And get lay people involved early on, because questions like these are never purely scientific.